Yep, the recording has started.
Okay. All right. It is 12:02 and I am Patty Richards calling the Vermont Community Broadband Board meeting to order on September 9th, 2024, a regular scheduled meeting. Board members in attendance at this point are Dan Nelson, Brian Otley, myself. We're expecting Laura Sibilia, and Holly Groshner had indicated she was going to be absent today. Christine, you want to run down staff?
Yep, on staff, we have Alyssa Matthews, Alexi Montserrat, Virginie Reboyne, Lucy Fortier, Heron Herzog, Rob Fish, Tony Clitheroe, and Christina Sweet.
Excellent. Thank you very much. First item on our agenda then is to go through first item for action is to go through the agenda and take action on the agenda. I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as provided in our packet. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion on the agenda?
Yeah, we would like to add an agenda item to discuss having a special meeting with the sole purpose of proposing an approval to the NEK CUD grant, which will be introduced at this meeting. Meeting should last 1 hour, a special meeting of 1 hour.
All right, so you want to talk about that in concert with, where's the NEK?
Yeah, number 7.
Item 7?
Yeah, that'd be great. We could do it at the end of number 7.
Okay. Just taking a note. All right, is there anything else on the agenda to change or add?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, thank you. I see Laura has joined us. Welcome, Laura.
Wait, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so with that, hearing no further discussion on the agenda, all those in favor of the agenda as provided with the addition of discussion of a special meeting on item 7 for Northeast Kingdom, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the approval of the agenda carries 4-0. Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes from August 12th, 2024. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as provided in our packet. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes from August 12th?
Yeah, we have Tony is going to, we have a small change recommended from NEK Broadband on the minutes, but a correction.
Hi, Patty. We just have a small correction with respect to the construction grant for NEK. We just wanted to add a portion of in front of construction grant. It's just to acknowledge the fact that it's not the entirety of the construction grant. Jenny has just put a portion of red line on the screen so the board can see what the change is that we're suggesting.
Okay, I'm not seeing that pop up, but I've got slow internet here. Can anybody else see that?
Yep.
Yeah, we can see it. It makes sense.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. All right, it actually just did pop up now. All right, any issues with that change?
No issue.
Okay, hearing none, is there any further discussion of approval of the minutes as provided with that one change? All right, all those in favor of the minutes with the change proposed by Tony, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry 4-0. Okay, item 3 in our agenda, public comment. Anything you want to tee us up?
Yep, I'll take that. So public comment, please raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. You'll be allowed 3 minutes to speak, and we have FX Flynn. FX, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a kind of a roaring sound in the background.
Yeah, somebody who's driving, maybe mute their phone. There we go. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. On page 26 of the slideshow in your packet, the slide ideas solicited, this is for the $2+ million in ARPA that's remaining, which is the subject of the long and underground drops idea. It characterized one of the suggestions as reducing EC Fiber's debt load. That's not what the idea was. The idea was to put those funds into EC Fiber's construction grant. At the end of the day, the state of Vermont is getting over $500 million in broadband funding, and EC Fiber is getting 17 million of that. It's already borrowed $70 million initially locally and then later through municipal revenue bonds. And the 17 million is going to cover roughly 55 to 60% of our build out of our remaining towns, 7 of which are characteristically unserved and underserved. And that 2 million, if we could put it into the construction grant, would have the effect not of reducing our debt load, but of reducing the amount of money we are still going to have to borrow. By characterizing it as reducing our debt load, it sounds like we think that we can ask for ARPA money to pay off our bonds, which is clearly not the case. So I just wanted to object to the way that was presented. And I want to reiterate my disappointment with the broadband board for not instructing staff to come back with ideas for how to get EC Fiber more ARPA funding, especially given the fact that we have bent over backwards to try and reduce the number of locations in our district that would qualify for BEAD funding so as to make more BEAD funding available throughout the rest of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have comments? Not seeing any. I think we're done with the public comment period.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 4, which is the KPI scorecard update. Before we jump into that item, I just want to let everybody know my video will be on and off because my cell phone overheats if I leave it on constantly. So if you see my image go away, it's because I'm just conserving the heat load on my iPhone.
Yeah, so for the KPI scorecard update, Alexi's got a few slides we'll show in public session, but then we'll need to go into executive session to discuss the details. So Judy will handle the move to executive session, and for the rest of the people at this board meeting, bear with us when we do go into executive session. Go ahead, take it away, Alexi.
Sure, thanks. Just quickly share my screen. Okay. So just a brief recap as far as public session goes on what it is that that we'll be doing in executive session. So as a reminder, in addition to just the BCBB standard grant monitoring, which obviously measures a number of indicators of how things are going with the grants, which you can view publicly on our dashboard. Much of that data is captured there. There is also the construction standards policy, which is also public, and that has some additional metrics that we are now collecting. And as we are moving through this process, we are working with the board to ensure that we are getting the right data that they feel comfortable with reviewing. And so this presentation will be a re-review of what we went over for performance in the second quarter of 2024. And we'll do this again since it's quarterly at the November meeting. So just wanted to provide an understanding for folks of what it is we'll be covering. And that concludes the public portion of what I plan to present.
Okay. Any questions of the board on the public part? Then we are ready to go into executive session. Ginny, why don't you move us all? That would be staff and the board.
Okay, hold on, Christine. Let's make a motion to go to executive session.
Yep, thank you.
I move that we go into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA section 313 paragraphs A6, which protects records exempt from the access to the public records law. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Laura. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of moving into executive session for the KPI scorecard update, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0. All right, Christine, you can facilitate moving us over.
Ginny, we didn't get a vote on that.
Jenny, are you there?
I am.
Okay, yeah, so Patty was trying to get a vote on the record before we went into executive session, and since 2 of the board members came over to executive session with us, she wasn't able to do her motion. So I'm not sure where she is right now.
So she's probably in the breakout room. Why don't I close and reopen the room? Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, but
Okay.
don't transfer us over because we
Yeah.
have to do a public vote on this.
Yeah, for now, just close.
Yep, it's closed.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sorry about
Patty's
that.
here.
No, I think I confused you. I'll take responsibility for that because I said move into executive. You just did what I told you to do. Sorry.
It's okay.
So,
Okay, where are we now? Are we in public session or?
Yeah, we're in
Yes.
public session to finish the vote. I apologize, Patty, that we jumped the
We
gun
jumped-
on that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's do item 4 motion to move into executive session all over for item 4 scorecard. I'll make a motion to move into executive session per 1 VSA section 313 paragraph A6, which protects records exempt from the access to the public records law. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. All those or any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of moving into executive session, please say aye.
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 Okay. Now we're
Any
moving into.
opposed? Hold on, hold
Oh,
on, hold on.
sorry, Jesus, I gotta.
Any
clear my shirt.
opposed? Any opposed? All right, motion carries 4-0. Now we will move to executive session.
Thank
thank
you.
you, Patty.
Hey, Jenny, please close the room when you can. We're coming back.
Like that.
So
Or whatever.
there we go. Excellent.
Right, we have everybody?
Laura's here.
Dan, Brian.
Yes.
Okay, we are back in public session. We took the KPI scorecard, detailed information in executive session. We've come out of executive session and there was no action taken in executive session. So next we will move to item 5 on our agenda, which is approval of Lamoille FiberNet OCC UD and Southern Vermont CUD sustainability plan. Christine, you want to tee it off?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to turn this over to Alexi. Why don't you say a few words? I think, we basically we're asking Lisa to kind of provide a summary of what was already presented, but go ahead,
Yeah.
Alexi.
Sure. So just as a reminder, we had discussed this at the last meeting, but the materials were not provided in a way that allowed the board to feel comfortable having the formal approval of it. So what we thought would make sense is to just have Lisa do a brief recap of what she presented last time, just so folks have it fresh in their mind. And then a couple just notes that both Southern Vermont and Otter Creek boards have now also voted to approve this, which we did not have at the last time. So that's another additional detail. And so I'll turn it over to Lisa and or Laura and Terry if you have questions for them.
Great, thanks, Alexi. Can you hear me all right? I had to log out and log back in because I couldn't hear you guys. All good?
All good. All
Yep,
good.
we're good.
Awesome. Okay. So I think Jeff Tilton and a couple of my board chairs also here, along with Laura Black, Otter Creek, and Terry Dorsey of Southern Vermont. As Alexi said, all 3 CUDs have executed, have voted to approve our sustainability plan as presented. The resolutions in the plan should be in your packet. The memorandum of understanding with Consolidated is also fully executed, and upon approval of our construction grant amendment, we would anticipate enlisting our outside legal counsel, our shared legal counsel, to draft amendments to our operating agreements, as well as a new agreement to codify the 8-year commitment for the annual payments. At the BCBB's request after the last meeting, all 3 CUDs got together, our sustainability working group, and discussed the pros and cons of a single payment versus annualized payments. We also met with CCI to discuss that, and ultimately decided to stick with the annual payment. And I just want to emphasize that this was mutual, that the CUDs felt it was in our best interest and ability to discipline ourselves to use the annual payments and rely on our legal counsel to make sure that the new contract protects our future interests and provides us with avenues of relief should something go awry. So I'm happy to go through the basic plan again if you'd like, or just let you ask questions. As I just the high level overview is that for the next 24, 25, and 26, this 3 CUDs will be prioritize completing universal service plans. We are all 3 on track to do that. This will be ARPA funded. we will, we have a sustainability working group and an interlocal agreement already that enables us to share legal counsel and other resources. And the mission here is to figure out how to align and cooperate to minimize overhead and serve our communities. And as the ARPA funding runs out at the end of 2026, we will transition to a CCI funded overhead for 2027 through 2034. As I mentioned last time, this 10-year plan, 24 through 34, is a strategic plan. It addresses all the elements that we had promised to address. And we just didn't feel we could go out any farther than 10 years, but the commitments include revisiting how we're doing at least every 2 years. That will be a biennial review of our governance structure, but we'll also be having annual reviews, not only with CCI in terms of performance under the operating agreement, but our own triumvirate. So that was the speed version of the plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm hoping that Terry and Jeff and Laura will come off mic and pinch hit where I might miss. Yeah. So.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Are there questions? So I'm going to take the questions in two parts, one in public session, and then if there are any questions relative to data provided under the confidential packet, we'll go into executive session to discuss those. Let's do the first part. Any questions that we can field relative to public data provided? Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, in terms of the contract that Lisa just went back through again for us, and I do want to applaud the 3 CUDs for getting together to do this, and thank Lisa in particular for coordinating here. Can you explain in a little bit more detail why it is not in the CUD's best interest to have a single upfront payment?
Well, I can share on behalf of Lamoille, the single payment would enable our budget. We have a budget that for the next 10 years, and we just felt it was our reflex that it would be easier for us to manage our budgets if the money was only coming in every year, and that we have high confidence in our council's ability to structure the agreement such that, you know, we have to such that there's no risk of non-payment in the out years. So it really was about just simply managing our own funds, and right now there are 3 of us for the next at least 2 years, 2027 through 34. It could be 1 CUD or still 3. So I don't know if Jeff, Laura, or Terry want to further comment on that.
Patty, I can't see, but I have something else to say / ask when there's time.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Laura. And just a heads up for folks, if you are not speaking, it would be great if you can just do a mute on your device to make sure we don't have any background noise. All right, anybody else have questions? Laura, we'll go back to you.
Yeah, just want to note that this good deal that we have put together has allowed CCI to benefit again from some pretty significant public dollars. And we have a solid 10-year commitment, partnership commitment from them with the CUDs. 10 years can go pretty quickly. An upfront payment allows the public investment that is being made to perhaps generate interest and provide additional years of security beyond the 10. And also, I just wonder if there have been any, in the event of any kind of a bankruptcy, which we have seen before from these folks. What's the protection here?
So I can't speak to a potential bankruptcy, but I can speak to, so the way the memorandum of understanding is drafted, it's bullet point number 2 that says, unless otherwise agreed. I feel like the amount, unless otherwise agreed, there's a set amount, which to me says in the out, if there becomes an issue, we can agree to more or less. In my experience, you usually don't agree to less, but and that our agreement, at least in Lamoille's, and I believe in Otter Creek's, Southern Vermont may be on a slightly different schedule, but we have a 20-year agreement that had some pretty significant remedies in case of default and non-compliance. And those, and in the out years after construction is complete, that compliance was related to network performance and customer service. So even though this sustainability plan is only 10 years, our agreement goes out 20. So again, and we were really appreciative of our council and feel that we have a very good, a very strong agreement in that regard. So I see Terry might have a comment.
Not hearing Terrence. Still not hearing you.
Jeff, I think.
Sorry, if I could step in, I was just going to say, and my connection was a little weak for a second. I don't know if Lisa hit on it, but one of the other reasons that a lump sum was potentially less advantageous was that by having a predictable annual payment, it requires us to better forecast our expenses in advance and be more conservative with those expenses. I think one of the thoughts is it might be easier to ask if we find ourselves in a pinch for an incremental increase as opposed to going back in 3 years and asking for more money. But and that's, I'm being pretty candid, but that's one of the things we were thinking.
So Laura, does that get to your questions?
I think it is an answer to my questions. I'm not sure that I'm satisfied with the answer, but
okay. I do have a couple of questions that were relevant to the confidential packet. So I'll ask again for, let's do this, and anything that was provided in the public packet that people would like to make comment or questions on, people being board members. Brian or Dan? All right.
I'm good. I'm good, Patty.
No, I'm all set.
Okay, like I said, I have just a couple of questions of some of the information that was provided in the confidential piece of the packet. So I'd like to move into executive session for that. Tony, is it still the same reference 313A6 for this? Or it's proprietary to the entities involved? Tony, if you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Sorry, this concerns confidential contract negotiations.
But is the reference 313A6 or is it a different one?
I will double check and get that and put it in the chat, Patty. But there is under the open meeting law, there is a general exemption for premature disclosure. And
I just want to reference the right paragraph.
Yeah, I think it's 3A1. I will get that for you.
Right, I'm going to put a motion on the table that we move into executive session per 1 VSA section 313, and then the specific paragraph relative to contracts for an entity to discuss the confidential material.
Second.
Thank you. I think that was Brian. Any discussion?
Yeah, we should say who that's going to include.
Okay, board members, staff, VCBB staff, then anybody that Lisa would like to bring in.
Yep. Go ahead.
Myself, Terry Dorsey, Laura Black, and Jeff Tilton. They're the board chairs of the 3 CUDs.
And Patty, this will just confirm that it is 313A1, capital A.
Thank you very much. That will be the reference that we cite in the minutes. Right, all those in favor, let's say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes carry 4-0. We'll now move over into a new executive session.
Okay, Ginny, if you could take care of that, please.
Yep, I just opened it up.
Thank you.
Hmm.
And Christine, just let us know when everybody is back.
Okay, I will do that. I think Laura is here. I think you're good.
Can you confirm that? We have Laura Sibilia.
Yeah, Laura, you,
Yeah, she is.
I'm here.
Excellent. Okay, so we've moved out of executive session. Inside executive session, no action was taken. We were going over details of the confidential material that was sent to us under confidential stamp. And we are now in public session. And what I'd like to do now in public session is item 5, we are still on. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the sustainability plan presented to us for Lamoille, Otter Creek, and Southern Vermont CUDs. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. Is there discussion?
Patty?
Laura?
Yes. Ma'am? Yes.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I am disappointed that the 3 CUDs were not able to negotiate an upfront lump payment. CCI is benefiting from public investment immediately. A lump sum payment would provide additional security for the 3 CUDs. Nonetheless, I really appreciate the work that the Vermonters in these 3 CUDs have done to secure an agreement with CCI and more accountability than they have now, more eyes on the situation for the Vermonters in their regions than we have now, more ability to do things than we have now. And so while I wish that all of these funds were coming up front, based on the work, the extensive work that these 3 CUDs have done, I am going to support this today. So, and I thank them for their work.
Thank you for those comments, Laura. Any other discussion? All right, hearing no more. All those in favor of the sustainability plan as presented, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations to Lamoille, Otter Creek, and Southern Vermont. Okay, let's now move on to item 6, Act 71 grant amendments for Otter Creek, Southern Vermont.
Yep, I will turn this over to Christina Sweet to lead the discussion.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So in your packet, you were able to review applications from Otter Creek CUD and Southern Vermont CUD for applications for amendments to their pre-construction grants with ARPA funds. Otter Creek is requesting $352,000, and these are for operational costs from now through 2026, end of calendar year 2026. And as a result of this application, Otter Creek will then essentially relinquish their remaining allocation of ARPA funds. So that would be $1.6 million originally allocated to Otter Creek that would return to the pool of funds available for other programs, such as the one that Rob will be previewing later in this meeting. The second application is from Southern Vermont CUD. Southern Vermont is requesting $220,000 in ARPA funds also for operational costs, and will be essentially relinquishing $488,000 in ARPA funds that were allocated to the CUD. So these would be the final ARPA requests from either CUD. That's my quick summary. Happy to answer any questions about either of these two applications.
Thank you, Christina. First question is there a recommendation from staff? Has staff reviewed the request in detail? And is it a
Yes.
supported request for Otter Creek in southern Vermont?
Yes, staff have reviewed these requests and we are in support of these applications.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Thank you, Laura.
Why is staff in support of?
Yep. Basically, these are the funds that, as it ties to the last conversation. These are the funds that they need to carry their administrative staffs over to 226 to provide the oversight. And that's when you saw the budgets coming down over time. The first 2 years are going to require significant oversight, which will decrease over time.
Thank you, Christine.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let's take these individually. I'll put a motion on the table that we approve the request from Otter Creek of $352,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Discussion of the Otter Creek request. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0. Congratulations, Otter Creek. I'm going to put a motion
Thank
now
you.
for southern Vermont. I'm going to motion that we approve the request for $220,000 for the southern Vermont CUD. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Laura. Discussion of the southern Vermont request. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations,
Yep.
Southern Vermont.
Thank you to the board for your support.
Okay, that now brings us to item 7 in our agenda, Northeast Kingdom CUD grant.
Yep, and I'll turn this over to Alexi to lead the discussion.
Hello. So somewhat in a similar vein, NEKCB is working on its plans for its remaining allocation. But uniquely, its remaining allocation is 19.7 million. So there is a understandably more protracted process for bringing this to you. They have two main elements that they are currently working through. One is for a fairly straightforward ARPA build that they would propose to do. And then a second is to request funds for a BEAD match. We wanted to bring this to you as a briefing rather than as for a decision today, given the complexity of the issues, to make sure that the board is comfortable with the information that you have and that the plan lines up as it will be presented for you. And then, as noted at the beginning of the meeting, we are seeking a special board meeting in order to take action on this. Partly this is to do in a similar vein with the $30 million state funding for BEAD match. We want to make sure that any funds allocated for a BEAD match that process is complete before we begin the BEAD subrecipient selection process. And so some of this is likely to involve business confidential discussions. So I believe Krista has a bit of information prepared to deliver publicly, and then pending questions may need to go into executive session. Are there any questions for me? Okay, Krista, take it away.
Super. So I just thought that I put on the public record the amounts. So we have, I can actually share my screen with the amounts. So the total amount of capital project funds that are allocated to NEK Broadband that have not been contracted are $25,339,161. The total request under this amendment is to contract $19,713,977. Of that, $8,404,687 is related to our ARPA spend, and $11,309,290 is a request for BEAD match, which would be contingent on a BEAD award, and the amount remaining, and then that leaves 5.6 million remaining after the proposed amendment. And pretty much everything that's involved in this amendment is proprietary and confidential, so I'm happy to try to take questions in public session, but most likely I think they're going to need to go into executive session.
Okay, any questions of Krista at this point that we can toss out that we think are public in nature? Otherwise, I would like to move to executive session to go over the more detailed pieces and jump into some confidential material. Okay, seeing no questions, I make a motion that we go into executive session for 1 VSA section 313A3. Is that the correct reference, Tony? Tony, if you're speaking, you must be muted.
I am so sorry, Patty.
That's okay.
313A1A.
Sorry, A1A, which protects, what is the,
It's premature general public knowledge concerning that would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage, and this concerns contract formation. So
thank you. That is the reference that we are going into executive session for. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? The ayes carry 4-0. So let's move over to executive session and we'll ask Krista some more questions.
I'm sorry, we need to identify who's going to be in executive session. Which would be, okay, we're good. We're good.
Or not.
Or not.
Rob chatted me. I think we're all
right.
set.
Okay, we have everybody back.
Okay, so we are out of executive session relative to the NEK CD grant request. We are now back in public session. There was no action taken in executive session. One thing that we did identify at the beginning of the meeting is that we need to set a date for consideration of this grant. And you're looking at the first week of October, is that correct, Christine?
Yes, it is.
Is that something that can be done with the doodle poll and set up that way so we don't have to spend a lot of time jockeying schedules right now?
Yes, yep. And it would only be 1 hour. You know, we think we just need 1 hour.
Okay, so our goal will be to set up a special meeting for this particular grant application for NEK after some additional information is provided. Krista, did you want to say anything in public session following our executive session, or are you all set?
I'm all set. It's a broader thing. I'll save it for public comment.
Okay. All right. So is there anything else relative to the NEK item? For anybody that wants to bring it up? All right, seeing none, let's now close item 7. We'll move on to item 8, which is the Chittenden County CUD grant request.
Yeah, and I'll kick this off before I turn it over to Lexi. You know, Chittenden County is a pretty volatile in terms of addresses, and we know there are other providers that are going to be going after these addresses. So when we present this grant, what my commitment is that we will make sure before we issue any funds, that those are deduplicated. So the point is, this map is changing in real time, which especially in Chittenden County, it's happening all across the state, it's actually happening all across the country, which is an issue with the federal maps. But Chittenden County especially is pretty volatile in terms of addresses. So I'll set that as a caveat and then turn it over to Alexi.
Sure, thanks. That covers a lot of the main points here. You know, we've mentioned this a few times over the past few months about this one working its way, you know, through the system essentially, and Chittenden County coming up with ultimately what its board is comfortable with and what its will is. So under our Act 71 obligations, we've been working with them to bring this forward. And again, it's different. We maybe should stop saying this one's unique, because it turns out they sort of all are. But in this instance, the uniqueness is the amount of territory that is served, and therefore the dynamics and essentially the nature of the proposal. And so with that said, I'll turn it over to Mike Vance, the chair of the Chittenden County CUD, for a brief overview of the project. And then again, should there be questions that would require an executive session, we can request that.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to share our little presentation. Okay, so thank you, Lexi. My name, for anyone who doesn't know, is Mike Vance. I am the executive chair of the Chittenden County CUD. I'm a resident of Williston, and as a day job, for disclosure's sake, I am a network engineer at Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom. So that's where my expertise in this sort of thing comes from. So the Chittenden County CUD, as you know, is apprised of these 8 towns. Almost all of them are, I think we're well over 95% served. Like Christine said, and Alexi said, our address list when we started was probably around 850, 900 addresses, and has shrunk as the time has gone on, and quite drastically even in the last few weeks, as I'm informed. Our proposal is a pretty simple proposal involving 2 phases. And phase 1 is our request for ARPA funds to build a portion in partnership with CCI of the remaining unserved addresses. And then phase 2 is CCI committing to apply for BEAD with our support to build the rest of the underserved or unserved remaining addresses. By the end of the ARPA fund, this just is a little picture that shows the division of ownership. The CCCUD will end up with about $2.1 million worth of installed fiber as assets, and CCI will own the rest. We will be delivering, or CCI will be delivering their Fidium fiber product, as they have already done so in agreements with 3 other CUDs. We also have a tentative agreement to negotiate a similar sustainability agreement with CCI that they have for the other 3 CUDs. And essentially, this is a duplication of the 3 other partnership models that you've already seen, and the same standards apply. Other than if you've seen all the information in the board packet, that is the extent of the proposal. A simple partnership with CCI to essentially what I would have called line extensions, but to build out to the few remaining underserved addresses that dot our 8 member townships. I'm open for questions. Joining me today also, Julia Andrews, our vice chair, and Mission Broadband, our consultant on the project. So they might have to fill in answers if I don't have it. Questions?
Okay, let's open it up for questions. And I do want to hear from staff and their recommendation and tell us relative to our experts' recommendation or summary of the request.
I can chime in for staff that we do support the recommendation. One of the larger benefits that we see to doing this way right now is that it will commit CCI to build to these addresses. You know, one of our ongoing challenges is having service that doesn't get to everybody. And so the value here being that this will commit CCI to building to everything in phase 1 that's on that list, and then while not binding a expression of commitment to put in a BEAD bid for the remainder of that territory. And
Yeah, and I'll add too that these, you know, this is the most challenging area in terms of universal service, because each one of these pockets are small pockets and best served by an existing provider providing an extension. If we don't get that, it would be a challenge to figure out how to get to them.
Is CCI the only service provider that would
No.
be picking up some of these pockets, or are there multiple players?
They are the service provider that responded to our proposal with an acceptable bid. However, nothing stops other providers in Chittenden County from serving these addresses in the meantime. And in fact, Burlington Telecom has already been quite active in building out in the direction of Shelburne, and nothing would stop Comcast from extending their existing network a few feet longer to fill these addresses. And in fact, these addresses that exist by and large are underserved or unserved because for whatever reason, they were a tiny pocket that Comcast probably felt at the time wasn't worth the money. These are also pockets of homes of some enormously wealthy people who built homes in very beautiful places, but just didn't happen to be on an existing served line. So these are people who could have afforded and chose not to extend lines to their homes. But they're 1 and 2 address pockets that spread out. I mean, one's an island and would even be deemed as high cost and not even.
But I don't think it's fair to characterize the entire Chittenden County area as wealthy people not being able to afford. I live in the town of Underhill, and I know on my road there are folks that are very unwealthy and do not have high-speed internet. I'm just trying to get at the overlap with different ISPs and how is that going to be managed to make sure that everybody does get picked up for universal service. For example, in Underhill, we have Mansfield in addition to Consolidated.
Mhm.
What is the relationship that you're going to pursue with all of the ISPs, specifically in Underhill?
We are pursuing a relationship with Consolidated to build to every underserved address. They are who responded. Mansfield did not respond. We have no relationship with them. But in our agreement, Consolidated will be bound to serve every legitimate underserved address.
Is it the expectation that Consolidated would negotiate with some of these other service providers to do it in a logical fashion so that they're able to actually make the best use of funds and get there?
Every address that we've seen has Consolidated at least telephone service. So they are on Consolidated's network. They are not served by somebody else, and they are part of an existing Consolidated exchange. So, like I said, it's free to anybody else to go and chase these things, but our deal and money best spent was best spent with one provider who could serve every possible address, and that is only Consolidated or Comcast, but Comcast didn't meet the requirements on other, some of the basic requirements. They didn't meet them. So no, and like I said, nobody else responded or was interested.
In terms of ownership, Michael, of the infrastructure, I understand it to be, the proposal would be Chittenden County would have 2.1 million of funds relative to the grant, and then Consolidated would pick up the balance of over $1 million.
In phase one, if I can, it was essentially, yes, the 2.1 was our portion of the phase one build. And then I believe theirs in phase one was a little over $1 million, a tiny bit over $1 million for phase one. And so they would be because we have to have ownership in this, they would essentially $2.1 million worth of the fiber would be owned by the CCCUD. Electronics and home equipment, routers, ONTs, OLT, splitter cabinets, all that stuff would be owned by Consolidated. Our ownership is in the fiber asset.
Okay, that's helpful. And then any additional funding that's necessary, how would you propose either raising that? Because I'm getting
we
to
would not
fully
be
served.
we would not be. That was the point. This is one and done for a phase one, and then Consolidated is pledging to raise funds and pay for all remaining locations through a BEAD bid if granted. We are well under equipped to make a go of this. We are all volunteer, and we don't have the resources to make the go of this. This was our plan to make this affordable, was to get Consolidated to commit.
Okay, Christine, does that achieve universal service? Does that check the box?
Well, with BEAD, it's going to need to check the box, but I just want to take the opportunity to reiterate, there are others that are competing for these areas, and we will make sure that we do not duplicate funding of others that serve the area. This will be it's going to be an ongoing iterative process, watching who gets connected. But the point being, this guarantees these addresses do get connected. And if others are going to connect, we won't fund those. But we do. The reason the board staff supports this is it at least guarantees those addresses get covered. But we still have further work to do with BEAD to get to universal service.
Okay. I'm not sure how this application checks the box of universal service. That's what I'm trying to connect the dots, and I don't see it.
Well, it's like any of the other applications. We know that, for example, some of the other CUDs are counting on BEAD funding to complete their their universal service plan. So this is really, pretty consistent with how we're treating other applications.
Okay, in our summary memo from CTC, this is an unanswered question. So
Yeah, by definition, but it follows our protocols where I'm going.
So if I'm looking at the data provided by CTC, I don't see it says universal service. That's a problem for me.
Yeah, tell us.
So-
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the CUD has not committed to providing universal service directly. They have committed, which is, it's not very different from any other CUD, but they have committed to funding this initial phase 1 through the ARPA grant in combination with CCI. Phase 2, which is the remaining addresses, and I apologize, I can't remember the count off the top of my head, but phase 2 is contingent upon identifying funding. And so CCI has committed a minimum match and potentially will seek BEAD funds. But in my read of the documents, there is no direct commitment by either CCI or Chittenden County that they will provide universal service. However, this is not very different from any of the other CUDs who said they would be seeking BEAD funds, or in some cases have not identified funding sources for additional phases.
But
Yeah,
tell us.
but let me add, at the end of the day, if they don't get served, we are still required to find service for them under BEAD. So,
Correct.
if they walk away, we're still obligated.
And I do want to just briefly on a BEAD rules note state that should there not be a bid for that area for whatever reason, we are authorized under our volume 2 to go out to existing providers in order to negotiate coverage. So that would be our solution in the event that for whatever reason, no one had an acceptable bid.
What I think the difference is all the other CUDs have put grant requests to us that have said the additional funding will be covering the additional difficult addresses. Their plan is to pursue BEAD, and if they are unsuccessful, then work with VCBB or whoever to cover those groups through the BEAD application with the state. So basically the state steps in at that point. You got to say that in the grant request, because I don't see the box I can check as universal service unless it says that.
Yeah, Mike, essentially I think we're saying the same thing. It's just the request is to put that in the contract that we'll work with you to find funding for those other locations, which is actually the requirement of BEAD.
Our interpretation to reach universal service, given our lack of resources and inability to cover a BEAD match whatsoever, was to pursue it this way. It seems like we're arguing a semantic approach, but it also seems like you need this said in a certain way to meet your requirement.
Exactly.
I'm willing to seek a contract amendment that says that the Chittenden County CUD is seeking universal service, since that is what we're trying to do, and that's how we tried to do it. If you need it said that way, it will be said that way. But yeah, I think we're arguing a semantic point here and not an actual different philosophy. We seek universal service, it's just that's how we arrived at it, in a way we thought it could be afforded.
Right, but I think that needs to be the plan of the CUD, to carry the ball all the way across the goal line and not drop it at the 10-yard line. We need somebody. The CUD is who we interact with, not Consolidated. They're not our direct partner. You guys are.
True, but that was why we.
But Michael, if you say, "Yep, I checked the box of universal service," we hold you accountable for that. That's the balancing act we're trying to strive for.
Fair, but we can't do it without we can't do it without Consolidated paying for it. And that's how we're getting there.
Completely understand that and support that. I completely understand the business model, but these words at the end are really important to make sure that we can check the box of universal service. If you say I'm going to wipe my hands and step back and just let Consolidated deal with it, that gives me heartburn. I don't know how I can check that
Well,
box.
we're not letting Consolidated deal with it, but Consolidated has to succeed. The only thing we can't guarantee that Consolidated will win a BEAD
I
bid.
understand that. I understand.
But that is the only way we get to universal service. And I think that's no different than, say, NEK. If NEK doesn't win their BEAD bids, there's gonna be an awful lot of people unserved. And then what? Yeah, they're committed to it, but they still don't have the money. And it's not gonna happen either. I don't see this as different. This is our attempt at getting these addresses served. If nobody gets BEAD money, nobody gets served. Someone may have checked the box, but it's still a lie. No one gets served.
That's not true that no one gets served. The few on the end of the line, so to speak, don't get served, but you would have pursued some other group you might have gotten 80%, or I'm just making up numbers, 70%. Our charge, though, as the Vermont Community Broadband Board and our statutory authority is we issue grants that they achieve universal service. And I need to be able to check that box. And the wording is important. You might look at it as semantics, but the wording is important in terms of accountability.
Okay.
Laura, your hand is up.
Yeah, a couple of comments. I don't know if you're familiar with the CUD model and how it's been functioning in the state, but actually when we passed Act 71, it was never thought that public funds would pay for all of the, well, not federal funds, would pay for all of these universal service plans. We have an operating CUD in the state, which raised both public funds and went to bond. And so it is a little different in terms of NEK. If they don't get BEAD, I think there is a plan B. And also it's a much bigger lift, I would say, than probably what you're looking at. Act 71 does require a universal service plan. There were two aspects of Act 71 that were really critical. And those were both universal service. Oh my God, it's gone from my head. How can that possibly be? And accountability. Thank you. Oh my God. Really and truly. Which brings me to the second point. One of the reasons that accountability was one of the two major objectives of Act 71 was because we were not able to hold the providers accountable, which you're experiencing yourselves in Chittenden County, not being able to make folks come to the table. Are you aware that CCI is partnering with 3 other CUDs and that there is a plan with CCI to sustain those CUDs over the next decade to ensure that the CUDs themselves can hold CCI accountable and ensure that their neighbors have service?
I guess I didn't articulate myself well enough in my presentation, but I specifically said that CCI has pledged to provide a similar or negotiate a similar agreement that they have with the other 3 CUDs for accountability and sustainability. So yes, I am quite aware of how Act 71 and CUDs work.
Well, that's wonderful. So I think there's probably a little bit more work to be done here, both in terms of the universal service plan and seeing that sustainability plan.
Christine, given the concerns raised, can you work with Michael to come back to us with an updated request?
Yes, of course.
I was under the impression we didn't have the time.
Well, we'd have to,
this,
we would have to address this in the special meeting in order to get that commitment.
Okay, let's make
I'm
that
sorry.
happen.
I'm sorry, Patty, may
Yes.
I ask Christine to explain the time constraint
Bead.
that's being referenced here?
without
Well,
May I ask
2024.
May I ask Christine to explain this? Thanks.
yeah, the time constraint is trying to get this wrapped up before we open the pre-proposal process of the BEAD program, which is actually on the date of the board meeting, October 14th. It's kind of the same issue as the NEK broadband.
So Patty, can I ask you to, since we're feeling this time constraint and there seems to be maybe not some there's some misunderstanding here. Can we just be really clear about what we need to have come back? For me, it is actually understanding both the universal service plan and that there is a sustainability agreement with CCI in order for me to vote for this. And I will say that I think, Michael, it would be good for you to know that I've voted against several CCI proposals because those sustainability agreements were not in place. So I think it's really important in terms of ensuring that accountability that's been missing here in Vermont for decades.
Okay,
I
so
don't know if there are-
sustainability, yep, sustainability plan, confirmation of universal service. Is there anything else so that's crystal clear what needs to come back? Dan or Brian?
I'd just like to thank Michael for putting the effort forward and the volunteerism here to try and do something to fill in these holes throughout that region. It feels a little bit different than the bigger portfolios that we were trying to cover before. So I know it doesn't fit exactly perfectly, but thanks for staying with it.
Well said, Dan. Brian, any comments?
No, I think Dan said it very well.
Okay. All right, so we will add this to the agenda item for a special meeting first week of October, and hopefully all will be well and we'll kick this.
Wait, can I ask a question then?
Yes.
So under universal service, you're looking for the Chittenden County CUD to commit to all the legitimate addresses and going forward. So even if CCI's BEAD plan fails, for whatever reason you reject their BEAD bid, and then we're left with these remaining addresses, we're on the hook to try to get them served.
Nope. What your proposal will say is that the game plan is CCI will pick up the remainder via BEAD. In the event they don't get that, then the state is on the hook for the remaining. You're outlining the plan for those to be picked up.
So the state is on the hook. Because from a funding perspective, we don't have, we're not going to chase, we're not going into the bond market, we're not doing these things. So as long as when I present this to the board on Wednesday and say, okay, we need to re-verbalize our commitment to universal service, and I just want to be able to say that we're going to do phase one, and if we're approved, but CCI is not approved for BEAD, and thus that leaves us with a remaining 300 some odd addresses, then the state of Vermont will be the ones figuring out how to get those people served.
My understanding of BEAD is that every address has to be secured before any dollars flow out of BEAD. So the state of Vermont has to put a BEAD application. Essentially, the state of Vermont, being Christine and staff, have to channel those BEAD requests so that they're successful. If there's one spot that doesn't get picked up, none of the BEAD dollars flow.
Okay.
Christine, am I right?
Yeah. I mean,
Now, doesn't that mean then we've kind of already said, I mean, not to circle this all the way back around, I know we must not have said it specifically, but if that's our plan that is our plan on the table, and that's how we reach universal service, we have I think articulated this correctly.
I think I think you could leave it here because I think we're all in the same place and we're really talking semantics here. I do think we're, I just want to unwind the conversation a bit, but why don't you just leave it here and we'll come back.
Okay.
Laura, your hand is up.
Yeah, we're really talking about two different pots of money. And one is a pot of money that is for Vermonters who are committing to provide universal service in their CUD region. And the other is BEAD, which is not that. It is different. And they actually did, one came first and you're applying for the first one. It's not, none of the other CUDs had the benefit of saying, well, we'll do our best. And then, so.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Well, we'll come back and meet again.
So I would say, you don't have to apply for these funds at all.
That's totally true.
Yeah.
And that was half our dilemma.
Yeah.
But we felt we were voted in to make this effort, and thus we're making this effort. Believe me, we were half the time deciding whether we could go out of business and do nothing, and that might have been the better choice. But we have to make a best effort to do this, and this was our, at the moment, best effort. We missed the mark semantically, and we'll have to come back and correct the verbiage. But this is an area that we're struggling with because of this. We have so few numbers, so spread out. This is kind of an odd challenge.
I appreciate that it's really that it's very different than any of the other CUDs, and I don't actually see that it's a semantics issue here at all. Actually, I disagree on that. So I think it's a choice. These funds that you are applying for were approved by the legislature and the governor, and were passed into law specifically to ensure universal service in a CUD region. And BEAD is something completely different. So,
and without it, nobody achieves universal service.
I'm sorry?
And without it, nobody achieves universal service.
Actually, that's not true. So we have CUDs that have achieved universal service. So
Yeah, we're getting.
So
like,
we're off.
We're on the edge of getting nasty. So let's just stop.
Yes.
Like this, Chittenden County CUD has a unique set of opportunities and challenges that make it different than any other CUDs that I've seen.
That's right.
And so
that's right.
If staff could work with them to try to refine what they're putting forward in the hopes that we can all get our heads around it and do something positive in that direction, that's great. If we fail at doing that, then we've at least gone down trying. I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I agree.
Michael, thank you for your hard work. I know this is not simple and easy. We all recognize that. And as Dan already articulately said, we super appreciate the efforts being put forward. But in order for us to check all the boxes and do our accountability, Christine knows what we're looking for. And I'm happy to talk offline, Christine, to make sure we nail this. But we've approved grant applications with a specific wording. And this is not a hard lift. Make it so.
Yeah, I think I just want to agree with you, Patty. I think I understand what the board is looking for. We'll sit down with Chittenden County CUD, see what we can work out, and then I'll check in with you, Patty, before we the board meeting to ensure that we're met.
All right, happy to talk more. All right.
All right.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so we're done with item 8. The next item on our agenda is item 9, priorities for remaining ARPA funds.
Yep, and Rob Fish will carry the water on this one. Rob, you take it away.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to quickly walk you through our decision-making process as well. Please stop me if you have any questions. So we had started this process back in the spring when we were aware that about $2.6 million of ARPA funds would still be remaining after all allocations were granted out. Thanks to the board for the approvals today for Southern Vermont and Otter Creek, that number is actually more by approximately $2 million. This proposal is only addressing 2.5 million of that plus the connectivity initiative. I'll get into that in a bit. But what we did to start this process was we solicited ideas from the CUDs. We reviewed those ideas to see if they would be compliant to the Treasury guidelines for the capital projects funds. We discussed it with VACUDA. We examined whether other programs could do the same goal. We looked at ideas of whether they could accomplish more than one thing at the same time and evaluated it for impact. So it was quite the process. During that process, there were a lot of ideas solicited. The top one was the long and underground drops. There was ideas of using it for federal match, trying to complete universal service plans if they were close, operations funds for CUDs without revenue streams, workforce. We even looked a little bit at the relocate orders as things start going underground. I am going to touch on this last one. Thank you, FX, for bringing up that point. It was framed that way by another CUD, but it is correct that EC Fiber did not frame it as reducing the debt load. So the long and underground drop program, as I said, it was the top request. We saw that it was a way to also improve business plans because those long and underground drops are potentially customers, that it addresses a barrier to access. Low-income Vermonters and even some middle-income Vermonters, having the fiber go by is not enough sometimes if you are in a manufactured home community, for instance, or if you have an extra long driveway. So we wanted to address that. So we thought this could get to some of the affordability issues. We wanted to initially support operational CUDs that have customers waiting. We did survey several of the CUDs and found that there are people who have signed up that wish to become customers, but cannot at this point because there's a large customer contribution required to sign up for service. And it also gives us an opportunity to push for best practices. Most of the federal programs require that the drop cost be included. So I'm going to go right into this. Please stop me if you don't want me to read this, but we wanted to put all the rationale together. So the proposal is to use up to 2.5 million in ARPA CPF funding and 1.2 million in connectivity initiative funding. I want to remind the board that the connectivity initiative was given to the VCBB under Act 71. No funds have been added since then, but there is $1.2 million in there, and we believe we can also use this for drops. We have figured out a way to do it. It's at the end of the waterfall when it comes to USF, and nothing more has been added. So that's where the other funds come from. But I will read this. Please stop me if you have any concerns. Whereas the Vermont Community Broadband Board surveyed Act 71 eligible providers with approved universal service plans providers and determined that concern with respect to the ability to cover the cost of non-standard long and underground drops beyond the standard drop is a top priority for most CUDs. Whereas Act 71 of 2021 indicates a legislative intent that a broadband project financed under the Broadband Construction Grant Program demonstrate an economically sustainable business model that will ultimately be eligible for financing in the private or municipal bond market. And whereas VCV staff has found that there are nearly 1,000 locations, likely more, along constructed provider broadband routes where a customer has requested service but cannot afford to fund the construction of the long drop necessary to do so. Whereas staff anticipates that the alleviation of this affordability barrier will positively impact provider business plans by increasing take rates and converting pre-signups to paying customers. Whereas staff expects that covering the cost of long drops will bring the state closer to meeting its universal service goals under Act 71 by improving business plans and increasing customer satisfaction. Whereas Act 71 expressly authorizes the board to develop policies or recommend to the General Assembly programs that promote access to affordable broadband service plans and requires the board to prioritize grant applications that provide consumers with affordable service options and support low-income or disadvantaged communities. You should note it's one of the priorities, to be clear. So here's the actual proposal. Now, therefore, the board resolves the following. 1, the extra expense associated with long drops is a barrier to affordable service, and that 2, covering the cost of aerial drops is a best practice that supports the implementation of universal broadband service, is a requirement of upcoming federal programs, and should be encouraged and incentivized. 3, the board therefore authorizes staff to develop a low-income long and underground drop program using up to $2.5 million in ARPA CPF funding, it's capital projects funding, and the remaining funds in the connectivity initiative for board approval as soon as possible, open to all entities with approved universal service plans and all CUDs. The requirements vary between the two programs. Furthermore, the board authorizes staff to further prioritize consideration of funding for the following types of addresses. This is in no particular order, but manufactured home communities. These are communities where the electrical code requires that all infrastructure be underground. Pre-signed up customers at eligible addresses who commit to service contracts of at least 6 months by December 30th, 2024. So this gives some incentive to the CUDs or other eligible entities to get more people signed up, to do outreach to people who may be a little further off the route. And then obviously low-income Vermonters eligible for other state assistance programs. So what we're asking for today is permission to move ahead with developing the program. We'll be figuring out how the points are appropriated and just the process as we go forward. But here's where we are right now. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Let's take questions. Rob, I have a question quickly on item 2 under the now therefore section.
Sure. So that's
it says covering the
best practices.
Covering the cost of aerial drops is a best practice. Should that just be dropped? Like, what if it's underground? What if it needs to be underground?
I think many providers, including some CUDs, have adopted a policy where they will now cover the cost for all aerial. Underground's a different beast in terms of cost and in terms of just what we're seeing around the state. So I'd be hesitant to say that we should be incentivizing what could be an unknown amount of funds based on underground because of how more expensive it is. But I think we would be at a great place if in the future, or at least moving towards that most providers are automatically covering that cost, since that's where we're going with the other federal funds anyway.
And I look at it as a line extension, and the line extension, the best practice is what that individual location necessitates based on the geographic structure of that location. And certainly the utility is going to figure out the best way to get there and the cheapest way to get there. So if it has to say aerial drops, okay, but
I have no problem just saying drops. I think it's
drops.
In the best case scenario, that would be the case, that the drops wouldn't be an issue.
Right. I'm happy to leave it just as drops to remove the aerial reference, just in case a better practice in a particular area might be it's better off going underground.
Okay.
Okay. Laura?
Yep. So low income. What are we using for definition there? I see the references to Act 71, but it's not defined in Act 71.
Sure. Our goal would be to align it with the eligibility requirements that were present under the Affordable Connectivity Program.
So Rob, would you bring us back a detailed program for action item? Or you just,
It's really at the, whatever the board would wish us to do. We certainly don't want to go word for word through an RFP ever again. I think you will
agreed.
be on the same page with us on that,
Absolutely.
but we can certainly bring back
Right.
a more detailed proposal as we go forward. We just wanted to, staff resources are scarce right now. We wanted to make sure that we wanted to get the board's full buy-in on this before we went much further.
Yeah, which
So-
makes sense.
Patty,
Go ahead, Laura.
yeah, I would like, the thing that I would like is just to see a reference to what low income means. So there's multiple definitions, just so that there's some clarity around that for the board and for Vermonters.
Yeah, I'm happy to authorize staff to develop the program, but I think it would be a good circle back around and just give us the outline of the main points. I don't want word for word, but just a summary of the main points. And that low income one that would be a good one just to spell out.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we authorize staff to develop a needs-based long and underground drop program and come back to the board with an outline of the proposal. Is there a second? Thank you, Laura. Any further discussion? Right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Ayes carry 4-0. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 10 on the agenda, which is legislative update, or sorry, legislative agenda.
Yeah, so in preparation, I'll take this one. In preparation for the legislative session, upcoming legislative session, we wanted to have a discussion with the board around some ideas. And this is really a brainstorming exercise. It's not meant to commit to anything, but it's to start the discussion. I'm going to share my screen. So as I stated, it's a brainstorming opportunity for the board. We've identified some initiatives, and we welcome the opportunity to discuss and develop any initiatives with the board.
Christine, is this in our packet anywhere?
Yeah, it's not in your packet. It was
Okay.
It was really meant to be a brainstorming issue. We can do some
Okay.
more formal presentation later. Just wanted to get a feel from the board. Hang on, I'm just going to go through this. All right, so we would support. We think it's a good idea to have a broadband consumer bill of rights. It implements the quality assurance provisions of the board consumer protection policy, which currently apply to the CUDs, but we'd like to see this apply to all ISPs. It addresses resiliency concerns to address emergency weather events and power outages, including battery backups and identification of potential partnerships. And just to review the quality assurance provision of the board's consumer protection policy, we want all ISPs to assure and measure network reliability, the customer service, high quality customer service, understand complaint procedures, assure customers are getting what they pay for, assure the networks
Patty,
maintained.
I'm sorry, Christine.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I apologize for interrupting, but I don't know that the board should be talking about an open session, like what it wants to do in terms of legislation in this area. Is there a rationale for doing that?
Well, this is not the board's position. This is staff's recommendation. So there's a fine point here that you may want to, come back to this in executive session if that's your choice. But our rationale was this: we're not binding the board to anything at this point. But anyway, Patty, You make the call.
So I think what Laura's really asking is, are we tipping our hands, so to speak, in terms of our strategic thinking relative to a consumer bill of rights? I think let's just talk high level priority items and not go into the weeds.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I think so, but I'm not, I didn't think about that when I put this together. Tony, would you weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think that's all we're doing. This, we do have Gwen on board. And, in future sessions, we do look forward to executive sessions with the board to actually map out strategies. But this is just kind of an overview of ideas that staff have come up with, that they, we just want to familiarize the board with these ideas, and if there's any immediate feedback or just a
Okay.
sense of awareness for our legislative strategy meetings coming up with Gwen.
Okay, but let's stay high level and topical and not go into the nitty gritty,
Okay.
dirty aspect. Stay out of the weeds.
Okay. So anyway, we want to protect, well, I'll stay out of the details here. We want to protect customers during a declared state of emergency. That's about resiliency and recovery. We'd like to focus on, as many other states are requiring their state agencies to provide used equipment for the digital equity program so that can be retooled and rebuilt and used to help low-income folks who can't afford devices. And any additional funding to support the low-income and long drop program would be helpful. And then finally, we update the definitions of served and unserved to match and mirror the FCC definitions. So that's the direction we're moving in. We're thinking, not moving in, that's the direction we've been thinking about.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, I have a comment, Patty.
Go ahead, Laura.
I would appreciate the staff framing for us the problems that they are trying to solve, or think that we need to try and solve in the legislative session, and then the opportunity to then work on those items with our legislative, with our attorney and our government affairs folks in executive session. But I think identifying the problems that we want to solve in open session is fair. But the details, I do want us to just remember that we are here because this is an unregulated space that is not really serving people. And there's I don't know, maybe a half a $500,000 that lines up every year in lobbying to keep it that way. So in the state of Vermont. So I appreciate being this far in advance. I think it's appropriate, and I appreciate some of the ideas that are floated, but it'd be great to think about it in terms of problems to solve also, Christine. So that's it. That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. And that was really the intention. And and what we can do is come back in October, identifying the problems that we're trying to solve and the suggestions on how to solve that. And we will do that in executive session. Does that work for the board?
And also let's use this as a jumping off point to stir other thoughts of things that we may want to bring up in the legislative session. If there's anything else that we haven't thought about, I haven't given any attention to this in my own brain cells. So let's reserve some space in October to go over what was left on the table last legislative session. What are we looking at for the upcoming legislative session for things that we want to be active on?
Okay.
All right, anything else on legislative agenda? Come back to this in October. All right, hearing none. Let's now move to item 11, which is parking lot.
Yeah, first of all, I want to express my appreciation, or our staff will, general appreciation of the great work Ginny Reboyne has been doing at keeping this organized and moving forward. So thank you, Ginny. And thank you for all of staff for being responsive to Ginny's request. Go ahead, Ginny.
Thank you, Christine. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Not what I want to be doing. Okay. So the items on these slides are items that have been already addressed. Number 93, Ms. Clitheroe has written a legal memorandum addressing this topic, which is included in your board packet. Number 87 was addressed earlier in this meeting, and 92 will be reviewed shortly. Number 94, the board packet process has been adjusted to include an updated timeline for staff to submit board materials, including confidential materials being distributed concurrent with the board packet. The board will then be texted to review those emails. As you know, 96 was addressed a little bit earlier in this meeting. These items were completed during the process of other tasks. For example, number 58, the administration of potential conflicts between federal and state requirements. The administration of that has been addressed with the accountability on affordability policy. The broader issue of federal preemption is ongoing. Number 59 is complete, superseded by the CUD sustainability plan. And number 62 has been completed as well. Sorry, I'm feeling a bit under the weather. So my voice is cracking. Item 40, Ms. Clitheroe has advised this policy may be unnecessary given the BEAD and ARPA guidance that came out last summer and has taken the time to research to determine the necessity. Number 95 is an ongoing task that staff will continue to evaluate during the grant approval process. At number 98, in your confidential materials packet, there was a legal memorandum updating the board on the BEAD affordability scoring rubric. Staff is requesting the board waive any attorney-client privilege so it can become public record. If approved, staff will include the memorandum in the October board packet. If you have any questions, Tony can address them. If not, would this be something that the board would approve?
All right, for those of us who are on the slow track, what actually are you asking for approval of?
So there is a confidential memorandum in your board packet that Tony wrote.
What page? Here it is. Here it is.
It is the BEAD affordability scoring rubric.
It's a long drop program. I'm trying to find it. Hold on.
Excuse
Do you
me.
have a page? PDF page?
50.
Thank you.
That's the long drop program proposal.
And 49.
All right, here's, oh, sorry. I found it now. Sorry. Tony, you want to take us through this, or this is confidential?
Yes, yes. So I just, this memorandum corrects information that was provided to the board before our initial proposal, volume 2 and BEAD was finalized. In between, or at some point in the interim, our that reinvestment of income that I'd referred to during the July 8th board meeting is no longer in our initial proposal, is no longer part of our affordability scoring rubric. So I just, even though that is a matter of public record, obviously, our new volume 2, I wanted to ask the board to waive the privilege on that memo so that the public record has that issue rectified.
Got it. I am happy to make that motion to waive confidential treatment of Tony's September 4th memo to the board regarding BEAD affordability scoring rubric. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of making that memo public, please say aye.
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 Right.
Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Let's make that a public memo.
Thank you, Patty.
Tony, that would be posted where?
We're just going to include it in the October board packet, and then it'll be in the record.
Okay, excellent. So anybody who's interested in that, that's online, you can see that in our next month's board packet. Okay, Jenny, thank you very much for the parking lot update. Is there anything else that you wanted to call out for us?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Hope you're feeling better.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's move to item 12, which is BEAD timeline update. Alexi.
Yep, go ahead, Alexi.
I believe Alyssa was actually going to take that.
Alyssa
Oh, that's
was
right.
gonna
Yep.
take, since
That's right.
Alexi's on the
Lexi.
road now.
Yeah, Alexi had something come up, so Alyssa will take that. Thanks.
Okay, so as we've been kind of saying all along, the BEAD timeline is and continues to be a moving target. So there are a few even additional changes from how this was presented in the board packet, but it's pretty much the same thing. So our BEAD eligibility data, we're waiting for a final memo and approval from NTIA, but that seems to be coming momentarily. And so the next thing on our list is this week is when we're hoping to post the RFA. There will be a draft version of our RFA for public comment, just to collect feedback of where there might be questions that we can provide clarity in when we finalize our RFA for the full proposal. Then we have a series of subgrantee preparedness workshops that we want to plan. Also waiting, we're in the process of bringing our consultants on board that will be providing additional capacity as we head through this next year of the BEAD subgrantee selection process. They will be assisting with these workshops, and so there's kind of a combination of us getting to the point of us getting our RFA out and having them onboarded to host those workshops. So that'll be late September, mostly over October and into mid-November. Our pre-proposal window, this is an item that has shifted to allow for some of these other shifts as we go. We're now kind of estimating that our pre-proposal window open will be on or around October 14th. That will be open for 2 weeks. And that's what provides, we have our initial project areas, and this will be, ISPs will be able to make submissions of justification of any kind of small changes to addresses that maybe are border cases that would make the project areas more efficient one way or the other by adding or subtracting some of the border area addresses before we finalize those project areas prior to BEAD subgrantee selection. And then this all pushes our full proposal to be open, estimating around December 17th. The idea is we'd have it open for 6 to 8 weeks to allow people enough time to pull together their bids. And then our initial selection and review process, including negotiation, will be from February to April. And the NTIA has let us know that they require this selection and our special award condition meeting at the end, once we have our selection chosen, but before we're able to make them public. So basically, we'll have to set this meeting with NTIA, they'll review it, and then we cannot announce our kind of final decisions for 14 days post when that meeting is with NTIA. And then our expectation, so that brings us to, we think we'll be presenting the winning bid proposals and announcing the results publicly around, but not sooner than April 28th, 2025. And then we'll be working on our final proposal materials over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Hoping to submit our final proposal on or around June 13th.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. Your workload and plan are well laid out. All right, any comments on the BEAD timeline? Okay, hearing none, let's move to item 13 on our agenda, which is Vacuda update. Rob Vitsky.
It's actually going to be me. Rob has gone on vacation again. Can you believe it? What a slacker. Okay, so I'll keep it pretty brief. So it feels like a bit of the calm before the storm with regards to the BEAD program, but obviously Vacuda and some of its members have been working quite hard to prepare for BEAD. So this includes financial, operational, and legal guidance and planning around the program. So we have a couple of workshops that we're planning to host internally for Vacuda members. One is this week on financial strategy on Wednesday, and then another one is next week on match funding under the 200 CFR rules. So that's next week, September 19th. And as you might imagine, we are all eagerly awaiting the release of the RFA for public comment. And, or I should say for clarifications, for Q&A. Don't want to give the wrong impression there as to our expectations. So as with staff, Vacuda has also been starting to think ahead about what are our 2025 legislative priorities. And for the reasons that Laura mentioned, obviously don't want to go into extreme detail here, but we do look forward to collaboration with the VCBB staff on shared policies once they've had that discussion with the board and agree what your policies are. I will say that obviously affordability programs and coordination with other utilities are among some of the key topics we're talking about. And then last but not least is digital equity. So as you all know, there's a digital equity nationwide competitive grant program, and Vacuda funded a discovery phase of that. And the result of that is to pull together a coalition that is going to be pursuing the NTIA's competitive grant. So the coalition is very pleased to have staff support in this as well. And as Vacuda, we believe that the members of this coalition represent some of the strongest entities in Vermont that are focused on digital equity and specifically on the digital skills, literacy, device access, and device affordability aspects, which are complementary to what we're doing as CUDs and as Vacuda. So as a result of that, we're not core members of the coalition, but some Vacuda members and Vacuda itself are providing constructive criticism to the coalition on its application to try and make sure that we get a submission on behalf of the state of Vermont that's as strong as it can possibly be. So that's it for the updates, and I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Very good update. Any questions of Ellie? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 14, which is general public comment.
Yep,
Can you feel that?
Yep, at this point in the meeting, if anybody would like to make a comment, raise your hand. You'll be given 3 minutes. Feel free to raise your hand now to make a public comment. Krista, shoot, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to bring a question to the board for your future consideration, which is how should, as we are in the process of planning our for BEAD and trying to determine different solutions and potential options and how we get especially to off-grid areas or long distance areas, raised the question for me, particularly on-grid addresses. How do we reconcile Act 71 and our universal service commitment, which we have contracted for in our agreement to bring service to every un- and underserved address in our district? How do we reconcile that with the potential of a high cost BEAD requirement that could imply that we can't bring fiber to an on-grid address, and then we would, so then there's a conflict between those two things. And I'm posing the question for your consideration as both staff and board, because there's, a not insignificant amount of work involved in these very rural areas that we represent across 71 towns to determine solutions. And if I know that I'm bringing fiber to my on-grid addresses, then I don't have to work toward finding off-grid or non-fiber potential solutions. So I don't expect an answer. I just, and maybe there'll be some information in the RFA that helps it, but I do think that is something that the board or a subgroup of the board might consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Anybody else would like to make a comment? Please raise your hand. Effects, go ahead. FX, are you there?
Sorry, I neglected to unmute. It was interesting looking at the dollar amounts and the number of locations. For the CCI line extension work in Chittenden County, significantly more per location pass than EC Fiber is spending, or even asking you guys for money for, in the new towns. I mean, it's like it's kind of, bothersome that it's not recognized how efficiently and economically we've been building out and serving over 25% of your problem. And we've asked a very simple thing of the 5 members of the broadband board to specifically ask the staff to come back with recommendations for how to significantly increase the amount of money that EC Fiber can get from the ARPA funds, because it is not going to be getting anything from BEAD or not anything meaningful. We certainly have no intention of submitting a BEAD application because the locations are either already served by us, or they are not actual locations that need to be served, or they are locations that are not actually broadband serviceable locations. And, we're doing the best we can to clear the decks on that. And again, in the big picture, when the history of this effort is written, $550 million, EC Fiber got 17 million. The citizens of that district are still paying off $80 million in debt. Why did that happen? Thank you.
Thank you, FX. Other comments? Okay, hearing none. I think we can go to the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Christine. So last on our list before we adjourn is the board goes into executive session to deal with some personnel matters. So I'm going to make a motion that per 1 VSA section 313A33, authorizing a public body to hold an executive session to consider personnel matters. I'll make a motion that we go into executive session for that matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any discussion?
Patty, I would like to come in just for the beginning of that too.
Okay.
Speak with the Board of Health.
Okay. It'll be board members, Christine. I don't think we need Tony. Give Tony a break. Let's move over to executive session with the board and Christine.
Okay, you should be moving now.
Thank you.